Tara. How you feeling today?
How am I feeling? Okay. I feel pretty good. I think, so we like film these in batches. We're like hanging out together this week.
Mm-hmm.
I think after this, I'm gonna go find a beach. Like I'm thinking about rerouting my flight to go like do like a little introspection and just like sit, be solitude, take a weekend to just be solo. So that's kind of like I feel good, but I also feel like I need some like regroup time.
She said, I've spent some time with you and now I feel desperate to be alone.
No, I love hanging out with you.
Where are you thinking you're going to go?
I might do like a Playa del Carmen vibe because I still have stuff to do. I still have work to do. I kind of need to like multitask. Yeah. It's not like I'm vacaying and I just want to like be somewhere with water and work there. So I'm feeling pretty good, but I feel like I need like a moment to like gather all of my thoughts about what's going on in my life and my business right now and like journal a lot. And like, that's kind of the season I'm in. How are you feeling?
You know, kind of similarly, actually. I feel pretty good. I feel pretty, I'll say, at peace with just how things are going right now. And, you know, we were hanging out the other night. We had a really good conversation about the future and just when you're in the middle of building something and you don't really know where it's going or you're not quite sure how things are going to unfold. But I feel like I am in a good spot as far as accepting the ambiguity and not allowing it to prevent me from taking steps forward.
You know what I noticed? Like we've been hanging out this week and I feel like Clipboard Katie, which is like one of your inner characters, it's very like, I'm on it. I'm doing the next steps. I'm organized. Like Clipboard Katie is chilling right now. I feel like I'm getting to hang out more with like just like fun, chill Katie a lot more.
Oh my God, thanks.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I do think that my coaching has been effective.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, but yeah, I definitely feel more
You're in like a lax season.
Yeah, okay. Just a little more chill. And it could be just also like the phase hormonally that I'm in right now. You're just catching me at a good time, point in the month.
Time.
Yeah.
You know, a few years ago, I hired a coach to help me like map my hormones and my menstrual cycle to my productivity. And I, like doing the exercise of like learning these different phases that women have hormonally, like really helped me, I think, just like understand myself and understand different seasons I might be in. So maybe that's a little bit of what's happening. This woman that I hired, her name is Shara Rax, and she has this system called Muse cycles.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, because the whole premise is that like men have these 24-hour productivity cycles. They kind of like always have the same hormonal pattern happening all the time. It's consistent. And so that's why the like 24-hour workday and like 8-hour workday kind of structure works really well for them. Like doing the same thing over, like my boyfriend's really good at doing the same thing over and over again consistently. I hate that.
Shout out Mert.
Shout out to Mert. Like, I'm not trying to do that. But women have these like 28-day productivity cycles around like your menstrual cycle and your hormones that are changing. And I got to learn a lot about how those cycles work. And it's been like something I'm kind of mapping my productivity to.
So is it consistent enough for you that you can kind of recycle the same, we'll say, calendarization of that every single month? Or I assume that there are like body cues that you're looking for.
Yeah, I mean, there's body cues. I mean, I know when my period is, right? So like that kind of like maps me to it. I know when my period is. I know when it's coming.
Mother Nature's least subtle clue.
Mother Nature's clear about that. And like I actually used to track it on an app. I do less like app tracking of it now. But like I don't think I ever thought about, first of all, I didn't know that there were like 7 different hormonal phases, 7 or 8 different hormonal phases.
7? Really?
Yeah,
I thought there was like 4.
So people talk about either there's a 4 version and then there's like a 7 or 8 version, which I love, by the way.
So
about
we're
like,
doing too much.
I love this about women, which is like it could go this way or it could go this way. You know, you're like not really sure which way to go. So there's a couple different ways that like people map out the different phases of like hormones that women have like over the course of 28 days. But I just thought like, I don't think I ever thought about that as something that I could optimize for and that was like a superpower. I think I like learned about my period growing up and learned about my hormones growing up as like a thing I have to like work through and overcome, and that it wasn't like, oh no, actually you're just like a magical elf, a magical creature that has like all of these different phases and you can like use them and leverage them to do your like womanly creativity. Like I don't think I related it to it like that before.
No, not at all. And I mean, I think that from a very early age, at the first sign that my hormones were disrupting something and that they were disrupting the ability to stay on that 24-hour clock, it's like, boom, birth control. Regulate it, like put something in there to make this smooth out, right? So that you can hit that consistent every single day cycle, as opposed to like riding the ups and downs.
Yeah.
So I mean, I was on birth control from like 14 or 15 till sometime a year or two ago. And
wow.
It's been really
the hormonal kind of,
like
they have hormonal and
where you take the, you know, every 7 days, whatever, they're different colors. So yeah, it was hormonal. Dang. But like, it's been interesting since then to kind of experience like the natural state of my body at different times in the month, and how there are some periods of time where I am like, I could not summon motivation if you handed it to me on a silver platter.
Yeah, we've all had that.
Like, everyone is annoying me. They breathe in my direction, and I'm like, ah. And then there are other times where I'm like, I wake up on my own at 5 a.m. I could run through a brick wall.
Yeah.
I could work for 18 hours straight without looking up and, like, not mind. And it's been an interesting journey to kind of accept that that's going to happen. And for me, the crucial part is not panicking when you're in the pit of the valley of despair that like, oh my God, it's never going to get better. I'm going to feel this way forever.
And maybe working on, as an entrepreneur, working on different things at different times accordingly. So that's what I learned from this woman, Shara. So like typically there are these phases, like you have like an early menstrual phase, you have when you're about to like start your period, and there's like a late menstrual phase, there's like an early follicular phase and a late follicular phase. There's like all these phases. And what I like about Shara's work is instead of like using these like fancy terms,
words.
Yeah, she gives like a muse for each phase, and the muse is like a woman, like a famous woman that like has done something impactful in the world that you can channel or that you can like expect to be channeling at each phase.
Okay.
So like, for example, the first phase is like your Sade phase, which by the way, you can like swap out the names of these people for like other people. Do you know what Sade is? She's a singer.
I don't, but isn't this the person that we were just talking to Jade Begelin about, that they wanted their skincare brand to be named Sade?
No, I think it's a different. Yeah. And
they, yes,
we talked
spelled the same way.
And so she was saying when you Google them,
this artist comes up.
Exactly. So she, you know that song? She has a song called "Smooth Operator." It's like her most famous song, and so she's got this like calming, introspective, like smooth sound, and so she uses that. Like that's the muse for like your menstruation phase, and what's happening in your body is like your body's like was trying to prep for a baby. There was like you had this like uterine lining building up, and it's like actually no baby was gone, and I almost think of it as like my body sometimes has this like amnesia. It thinks we're on a mission to have a baby. We're not, by the way, but it thinks that. And then when it like doesn't happen,
not. She said, let me clarify.
I'm trying to let her know that we're not doing that right now.
So you're saying that this is the phase when you are on your period.
Yes, because you're like shedding that. So essentially your body's like, oh, it didn't work out. And it's kind of like in this like solemn, kind of like chill, calming phase. And that's the first phase. And so like if you think of like Sade or like any other sort of like singer that has this like smooth, sultry kind of vibe, that's kind of what you're channeling in that first phase.
Let's translate that then to like how that would apply to work.
Yeah.
And like what we'll say apply more broadly to productivity or like drive.
So in that phase, you're optimizing for rest and reflection. Like this is not this is not the like I'm gonna tackle the big project right now. Like if you can avoid it. Obviously, like there's stuff going on in life. If you have a big deadline that just happens to land on that date, like you can't do anything about it. Yeah. But as an entrepreneur, you get to kind of like craft your schedule a little bit. So if you have like a project you're working on that needs like intensive execution, that's not the time to put it. It's a different time to put it.
Okay, interesting. Yeah. And then, but there's early and late.
Yeah.
She kind of differentiates between. Is there a reason for that? Or is it kind of all that same muse?
The two different models. So like one of them just puts like menstrual phase as one. And that was the one that you were talking about that has like 4 phases. And then the one that has more phases that has like 7 or 8 phases, it does the early menstrual. Yeah, it bifurcates each step. So if you think about them in the bifurcated model, the first one is sort of smooth, sultry, chillin'. The next phase is like what she calls your Serena Williams phase.
Oh, I already like this.
Yeah, because like I don't need to explain who Serena Williams is. Y'all know who she is. This is sort of like your post-menstruation, and you kind of get this like surge of ability to execute, right? Like I think about like Serena Williams just like crushing it on the tennis court. Like there's this kind of like calm period right at the beginning of your period, and then like right at the end you kind of uptick on like energy. And so what I do is like if I have a big project I need to work on, I'll be like, hold on, let me intentionally chill.
Yeah.
And then I wait for this like wave to kind of kick in. And now that I know this model, I can kind of like spot it like, oh, I'm getting my energy back in this
interesting.
way. Yeah. So this is a good time for like planning and tension setting. Like it's not like your most intense phase, but you're sharp.
You're riding the wave back up.
You're sharp riding the wave back
and
up.
intention setting. I like it. Okay, that one feels clear to me.
Yeah. Okay. So then after that, the third phase that kicks in is like a creativity phase. So think like an author, like J.K. Rowling, someone who's like super creative. And this is like your follicular phase. So you should be thinking about what's happening is like your energy and your estrogen levels are starting to go up. And so you get more creative, you get more productive, and you have lots of like cool ideas and sparks. So like if I have something where I need to like generate something new, come up with like a new idea and concept, I will like try to put it here, or at least kind of be like, okay, I know I just started my period. This is not the time to come up with creativity, but I know this is coming. So let me like wait for that ride.
Interesting. So something that happened to me recently that I thought was really funny, because I've kind of known for a few years now that this follicular phase, or we're calling it like the J.K. Rowling, the creative, imaginative author phase. Yeah. I have known that that's what's quote unquote supposed to happen. And recently I was having...
How did you know that?
I think because, gosh, what book was it? One of my friends read a book about this a couple years ago, but it was more specific to the 4 model. And she had like told me all about a lot of these things. So I knew, okay, follicular phase, that's where this is in the month. Like I think in my Aura ring, when it tracks it, my temperature will drop. And so I'll know that like, oh, I have a negative temperature, and it's like a temperature drop at night now instead of elevation. And that's kind of what triggers it in my brain of like, oh, okay, we're now like hormonally somewhere else. Okay. Which I do really like, by the way, the like biofeedback, because it kind of legitimizes it in a way that for some reason, I think if you're skeptical or like, if you don't know much about the science of how your hormones work, you might be kind of like, I don't know, this feels kind of woo-woo. But when you can see, oh, my resting heart rate is lower, my temperature at night is lower versus, oh, it's all spiking, like that I think kind of legitimizes it. So anyway.
This is very much like a Tara Katie versus Katie way of approaching this, where I'm like, no, I don't want to see the like statistics on this. I want to feel in my soul what's coming and the wave of like how I'm feeling. And you're like, I'd like to see the data, please.
I want to see how low my resting heart rate is. But I do think that the feeling into it is important, because this most recent time, I was having a hell of a time. I don't know what was going on, but I was extremely irritable. I was very apathetic. I was like, for probably a week, I don't want to use the word depressive state, because it's obviously not depression, but it's kind of that same like, don't really want to get out of bed, feel pretty indifferent about everything. And it kind of freaked me out, because I was like, this is really the time in the month where I'm supposed to feel the most the other way. And the fact that I feel down right now I'm like, is something wrong? And then when I transitioned into the next phase that we'll talk about, everything got better. And it felt like the clouds parted and the sun was out again, and I felt amazing. And
interesting.
I looked it up, and it said that this like spike in estrogen that we're referring to that does cause like an energetic boost and a creative boost. If you have too much estrogen, it almost like pushes you back the other way and can make you feel really moody and kind of down. And so then when you shift into the next phase and the estrogen drops again, it's like, sweet relief. Like I feel, I feel a little more stable now. And it's interesting because I think that like even we'll say the natural way that these phases are supposed to work, or the cycles are supposed to go through, like your own body at certain times, I think can get maybe a little out of whack. And I'm like, I still don't know what that was about. I would like to get blood work done and get my hormone levels tested, but it was kind of funny because I was like, oh, this feels like the opposite.
This has really come up in a lot of my women friend groups, particularly like high achieving women friend groups of like, how, like are you getting tests for your hormone levels?
Yeah.
Like what's kind of going on there, and like seeing if you're feeling like, I don't know that, for example, for like my mom's generation, this was like a thing that they were talking about. Not, and I don't mean like, maybe they talk about it in like a menopause kind of structure conversation, but not in a like, how do I feel aligned? Am I feeling like what I should be feeling at this time period, and something's kind of off? I'm not really sure that, like, I want to ask her this. I don't really know that this was at least she didn't go talk to me about it.
I would be shocked if
Does your mom talk to you about this?
No chance. And I don't think that this was something that they were really thinking about, to your point earlier about how it used to feel like your hormones or your period, these were things we almost mock them in culture. Like, oh, she's PMSing.
Yeah.
And a bitch. Like, we mock them. We don't take them seriously. We don't really, in a broader sense, know very much at all about the female body. And so I think it's interesting to become an adult and to start learning about these things for yourself and go, oh my gosh, wait a second, there's so much here. Like, this is such a complex organism that has such, like, I am such a complex organism that it's like my moods can probably be mapped back to my hormones. If things are going wrong in other parts of my body, like they're probably related to that. And it's just funny that like that's not really something that you learn growing up. Even like going through puberty, I don't recall ever being taught any of this.
No, and the reality is that you're actually just like a superhero transformer who has like all of these different phases that you can leverage in business too. So for example, like we're talking about this like creative phase, what's happening like right as your period is ending, you sort of like have this like estrogen kind of increasing, and essentially your body's like, oh, you want to try again? We can try again. We can try again. That's essentially what's happening. Like, I know we kind of like, oh, we were solemn about it not working, but we could try again. That's what's happening. She's annoying.
Bounce back.
Yeah. But like, for example, right now in business, I'm doing a lot of like creative planning for new projects. I've been telling you about like a new kind of like content project that I'm working on right now. And I have like in this phase, I recently was going through this phase of sort of like creativity, J.K. Rowling phase, and also the phase right after it too, which we'll talk about in a second. But I got sticky notes out. Sticky notes were on my window. I was like, I went and I had to find a printer.
Story.
I'm cutting stuff
like,
out.
Oh, she cooking.
I was cooking.
Let her cook.
Let me cook. And so this is one of my favorite let me cook phases where there's kind of like this increase. Like we're on our way up to the top of the like peak performance moment, right? And so this creativity moment happens there. The next one kind of like as we're trying to get to peak performance, phase 4, Shara calls this the Madonna phase, and you're kind of getting this like bold, expressive confidence. This is another one of my favorites. It's kind of like sequence right here where we're like up and to the right. A bunch of energy. You have a lot of like energy for like social interaction, high energy stuff, which is important to me because I don't often have a lot of energy for social interaction. Like I love working remotely. I love working from home because I can be like, okay, I'm off the Zoom and I'm not like in the office with a bunch of people, so I don't have to socialize. And we can get back on Zoom, socialize for a minute, but I have to muster up a lot of courage for doing this. So this Madonna phase from an entrepreneurship perspective is a good phase for me to be like, I'm sending the new partnership request. I'm having the new partnership call conversation. Like, here's where I'm going to like land it because I've got a lot of like charismatic energy to be with people, and in other scenarios I'm not really trying to people very
this
much.
Is stage 4.
This is for the Madonna phase.
And the technical scientific thing that's happening is pre-ovulation. You have not yet ovulated, but you are ramping up to that point. And so we're saying that this is the time to seize the riz that you have.
The riz.
Be brave. The bigger choices, the bold moves.
The like social interaction. It's almost like I kind of think of it as like I'm about to ovulate, so I'm feeling kind of flirty. I think of Madonna as very flirty, you know? Like
I hope y'all are watching this on YouTube.
I don't even know what look I made.
You just gave me the flirty look. You gave me the little twinkle in your eye.
But like you can that like flirty energy is really useful in business for like closing a new customer. I don't flirt with the customer actually, but like you're feeling outgoing and you want to have the call, like let's jump on the phone, let's have that chat, or doing the new partnership, right? Like those are things that are really good to do at this phase. So that's that 4th phase as we're sort of getting more energy. Beautiful. And then you kind of like get to this peak phase, which is phase 5, sort of the Misty Copeland phase. She was like she's a famous ballet dancer at the American Ballet Theater, which is like characters of like peak performance, like grace, strength. You're like at your 10.
Grace and strength. The difference too here between like the Misty phase and the Serena phase.
Okay.
That I think is I'm just noticing kind of like they're both
Slight
such
nuances.
peak performance athletes, but such different athletes.
What do you think is the difference between like Serena peak performance and a Misty peak performance?
Well, the Serena phase conjures to me like the fact that we're saying that that's when energy is starting to rise. It's kind of like you got that dog in you, like you're coming back to life. Like,
Yeah.
you know, we're like
I'm
hitting
back.
the serves. It's just this like kind of like power.
Yeah.
And to your point about Misty and like strength and grace, it feels a little more controlled and refined.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's just my association with like ballet as opposed to tennis.
Yeah.
But it's funny that, I don't know, I think that that captures it really, really well. So if this is like the high energy phase, the ovulation, what would be the difference between this and the pre-ovulation phase?
So a quick comment on this, because the pre-ovulation phase was the Madonna phase, right?
Yeah.
So like I think one is like really like we're starting to come into like being like social. I would call the Madonna phase your like social flirty phase. I would call like the Misty phase like you are still like really good communication skills, really great like almost like mental clarity. Like you're clear.
I wish I could just bottle that and like drink it every morning.
Yeah, which I think about like
That
my
feeling.
my Serena Williams phase, like I'm like getting back in the game. I'm like going, but I'm not necessarily like clear and like everything's just like I'm kind of just like hitting the ball and like go like and of course like tennis you have to be like very clear as well. But when I think about like this Misty phase, this like phase 5, it's almost like when you're ovulating, you have all of these kind of things come together. I'm creative, I'm communicating well, I'm clear. Like this is the time, for example, if I need to do some like corporate politics at work. This is the best time to do it. It's not when I'm like kind of like wild swinging the ball.
Yeah.
It's like where I'm like, all right, I know I have to get buy-in from this person. I know I'm going to have to communicate with this person
like
to make that happen. I'm at the mastermind and like at kind of my like peak, which is interesting because like go mode is not necessarily peak.
Right. Right. That's a good distinction.
Sometimes you can be like go mode and just like going through a wall and like not as productive. You're kind of like still getting your like sharpness. So like the sharpness and energy is what you want.
I think my problem is that I tried to do my corporate politicking during the phase where I want to be horizontal, and it just comes out all wrong. There is no masterminding.
So you're like trying to get buy-in from people, but you're fed up with everybody.
Yeah,
so you're just
imagine that. Try to get people on your side while you're also like at your peak level of irritation.
I don't think
doesn't go very well.
I don't think you have to say imagine that. I think most women have experienced trying to get like being at that phase where you need to like manage something well and you're just not having
And that's the trick that your brain plays on you at that time because you're so pissed off and you're so easily triggered by things. At least I am. I'll speak for myself.
Yeah.
That like my brain is telling me, oh, you need to go do something about this right now. It's like the little survival instinct going fight or flight, fight or flight. Like something needs to happen now. You're not thinking clearly. You're not going, let me wait it out. Let me like step back. Let me be strategic about this. Let me wait until I'm not feeling so edgy. It's like, no, girl, go be edgy. Go edge all over everybody.
But really, maybe what you should be doing, for example, if you're in that like Sade smooth operator vibe and you need to like handle a situation, it might be better to like go journal about it.
Yeah.
Get clear, kind of be introspective, get clear about that. And then like once that energy hits, like you almost never have to respond immediately to a work email. Almost never.
No,
almost
you
never.
don't.
And so maybe it's like think about it. Even if you sent a message that it's like it's a customer and you're like, hey, I'll get right back to you about this. So like acknowledge it. And then go get your journal, write out all the like frustrations or feels that you got about it. And then you can come back maybe at a different time when you're like clearer and you might even have like a totally different email response.
That almost always happens to me if I have the wherewithal to wait. Okay, so phase 6 we're on now. What is phase 6?
Phase 6, she calls the Hedy Lamarr phase. Hedy Lamarr was this like glamorous old Hollywood actress, but she also did a bunch of contributions in like, she created this like radio guidance system for torpedoes in World War II. And so she's got this like multitasking of like, I'm beautiful and glamorous, but also like really smart, got all the sharpness. This is sort of like, I think about this as like my multitasking phase. I think I'm here right now.
Interesting.
Approximately.
Okay, so like some of these are beginning to blend together for me, which I feel like is maybe why I'm more of a 4-part girly.
Totally get it.
4-part cycle girly.
Yeah.
But this is technically early luteal.
Yeah,
so
that's
like
what it's called.
You have not started your period yet, but you're starting to come down maybe? Is that a fair characterization?
Yeah, I think you should think about it that way. Sort of like there's the up and the down.
You're beginning your downswing.
Yeah, so like at the Misty Copeland, we're sort of like hitting the peak of the mountain and we're sort of beginning this down too. So we're sort of like now multitasking. So like your energy is still high at this phase, but it maybe is starting to like temper a little bit. Okay. Yeah, your body's like, oh, should we prepare for a pregnancy again? That's what this is all centered around. Like your body has this whole machine and system and it's got hormones around this, right? That's what it's doing. Yeah. Okay. So this is sort of my multitasking phase. And then the next phase after that, we start to get a little bit more about like incubation. So we start to get, like, she calls it the Maya Angelou phase. So she's like, Maya Angelou is a poet and a writer. And you start to like, this is a good time, like your energy starts to decline, your mood maybe starts to fluctuate. You want to focus in entrepreneurship on tasks that really require like less interaction with a bunch of people and more introspection again. So actually in this 8-phase model, there's actually multiple phases that are like your incubation phase, for example. It happens more than once.
Oh, that's interesting. What
on the way up, on the way down.
I'm now trying to remember what would have been the previous incubation.
Sade, kind of like when we started at the beginning. Yeah. So we're starting to kind of like go back, right?
Okay.
So we have the Maya Angelou phase, and then the last phase she calls the Rachel Carson phase. Rachel Carson's this famous marine biologist, and she started a lot of conversation about like the conservationist movement. And so she's this muse for like preparation for the renewal. Right. So she's kind of like thinking about how we renew the world, renew the ecology of everything. And so it's kind of like foresight, kind of preparing for this next phase. And so this is kind of when your like energy might be the lowest, where you start to feel like some PMS happening. You need more rest, a little bit less demanding tasks. So we're kind of heading back down to start looping all over again.
So our Rachel Carson phase is technically what we would think colloquially of as the PMSing. Pre-menstrual.
Yep.
Right
100%.
before you start menstruating. Okay,
we're kind of preparing for and thinking about the next things.
This kind of reminds me of the concept of, I was talking to someone recently about how regenerative farming works and how like in order to really get the most out of any piece of land, like you have to give it time to regenerate and like for the soil to turn over. I mean, I'm not a farmer. I don't know what I'm talking about. But I like the association here with like the conservation movement and this idea of it being a time where like your energy is going to be low, accept it.
It's cool.
Just rest. That's like if your body's telling you to rest, just rest. Because guess what? You're going to be on the upswing again soon, and you're going to have way more energy to get through all the things that you need to get done, and you're probably going to do them a lot better too if you wait.
There's an interesting analogy here too to like what you just said, which is like if your energy is low right now, guess what? It's going to come back in the upswing. And that's kind of what business is, right? Like there's highs and lows, and you've got this like back and forth happening. And I think a lot of times when you're in the low, it feels like you're going to be in the low forever.
Yep.
And when you're in the high, you feel like you're going to be in the high forever. And it's like, actually, no. There's a thing for you to embrace, which is riding the waves, riding the roller coaster of it all. And actually, you might be more productive, better off, more of like a badass in a way by just actually allowing yourself to ride those waves and trying to place a little bit about the kinds of work, the kinds of business that you do at the right time and in the right place.
I think my next step would be sitting down with this information and looking at trying to figure out where I would put myself right now based on, again, just my Oura Ring data, because I can see it does track that, and then try to map out like 4 to 6 weeks worth of work. Like, almost like a hypothetical roadmap of like, okay, if I'm like relatively certain this is how I'm probably going to be feeling in this specific week, what types of tasks do I want to put in there? Okay, I'm not going to schedule a bunch of meetings. I'm not going to schedule a bunch of interviews. I'm going to schedule deep work time that I can sit and be alone and like really think and connect dots. Versus the like, oh, I'm in a Madonna phase, I want to go be the pop star now. But I think that is a really interesting way to even Even if you are in a planning phase, just to think about like, okay, it's probably not going to map 1-to-1, but I don't know, it's kind of
and
a
stop
game
shaming
changer.
yourself for being in that planning phase. And I think there's even a simplified model that maybe you can play out. I'm kind of playing out in my head, which is like, am I in an incubation phase? Am I in an execution phase? Or am I in a creation phase? Like, where do I feel like I am right now? And I think you can do that. By the way, if you're on YouTube, we can see in the comments. So come over there on YouTube, or if you're listening somewhere else, you can come to YouTube. Tell us which of those 3 phases you feel yourself in right now, kind of regardless of this framework.
Name
Are
one
you
more
in
time.
an incubation phase,
Okay.
execution phase, or creation phase?
Okay, I feel like I'm incubation. Which might explain the feelings that you're getting from me of being a little chiller.
Interesting. Yeah, okay, so it's not like execution, like everything, clipboard Katie, we're getting everything done.
Yeah, she's been real quiet. I don't know where she went. I think she's on a break.
Okay, that's okay.
What phase are you in, more broadly?
I definitely just came out of a creation phase and I'm coming into an incubation phase, which, by the way, is not crazy because we hang out now, and so our periods are like aligned a little bit. So usually like we're kind of aligned. So that's kind of where I am. I feel the incubation is coming on. I know that actually it probably already came on and I'm fighting it because the stuff I have on my calendar is not incubation like.
Not aligned to
But that's why I was like, I need to go to the beach. I need to change. And by the way, my decision to go to the beach is a business decision. It's like, that's the energy that I need to be in to make my next business decisions. I need to like, I just created a bunch of stuff. I just got I had an execution phase before that where I was like working really hard. I got a bunch of stuff done. It was really impactful for the business and grew the business a bunch.
Oh.
And then I kind of was able to pull back from the business a little bit. And now I had like a bunch of creative ideas that I was sparking. I had a lot of ideas. Now I'm kind of like, all right, I need to look back at all of this.
Process
it, write it out, integrate it all. Yeah, in that sort of incubation phase.
I want to talk about all the stuff that you executed and like the stuff that had a really big impact.
Yeah.
In a different episode.
Okay, amazing. I had like a big swing of energy from last time I saw you and like got a bunch of stuff done and
amazing.
like moved lots of needles. I burnt myself out a little bit.
That phase?
I should have been. So, okay, here's something I'm really learning about myself that's super relevant to this conversation.
Okay.
I work better in seasons, in phases. And I need to get better at designing my life, designing my entrepreneurship to work in seasons. So what I did do, since a couple months ago, what I did do is I kind of went into execution mode. I had a lot of energy for it. I was probably perfectly hormonally aligned to like get going and start that and kind of kick it off. And I didn't set an end date for it. It was just like, go.
Sprint until you fall down.
Yeah, kind of. Like, I wasn't intentionally like, oh, I'm going to do this until I fall down. But that's what ended up happening.
Yeah.
And I could have been way more intentional. I think for me, my hardcore execution sprint has like a limit of like 6 weeks.
That seems like a long time.
I'm very good at like clocking in and just being really focused.
Yeah.
But I can't do it all the time. And probably like I can do it aligned with like a hormonal push, right? A Serena pushes me up the hill, right?
And
to
then
get
you
me
take that momentum and
I can do a good job running with it. But I think what happens is what I could have done better is I could have set an end date.
Yeah.
I've been debating this, either an end date or an end result. But I think an end date.
I think end date's more powerful. It almost reminds me of like the benefit that we had when we were in school, and like a semester was a defined period of time. You were in a class and you had there was an exam at the end, but everything was very predetermined. And so if you were gearing up for an especially exhausting season, like exam season, I feel like a big part of the reason that you could really push through and go super hard was because you knew that like after this day, I'm gonna get to rest, and it's gonna be over. It's temporary.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. When it's just like endless expanse, indefinite push, it's really easy to lose steam, and I think to lose the plot a little bit too. Whereas it's like, okay, I have to get this done, or this is the goal for the next 6 weeks.
Yeah.
I would probably, for myself, just knowing me, I would probably shorten that window even more and go, oh, it's gonna be 2 or 3 weeks where I'm going really hard at one thing. and giving myself the excuse of like, if other priorities come in, those get deprioritized. I'm not going to allow myself to get off track. Anything else that comes in has to wait because this is the focus.
That's a good point. And I think I actually did 6 weeks because I felt like I had this like debt of not having done my last sprint in the like because I hadn't timed it all. I was like, oh my God, I feel like I have to play catch up and do a bunch of stuff. If I had probably had like a good sequence of like, we're going to do like a 3-week sprint. I'm going to come in, we're going to get a bunch of stuff done. I'm going to infuse my team, infuse the business with this energy, right? With my customers, all of that. And then like now that we've got all these changes, I can like back up. My team can like integrate all of those things. And typically maybe I can go back up a little bit and work on more creative stuff. I have new ideas and I can be whiteboarding and like putting my sticky notes up. And then I can take like an incubation phase and then circle back.
Yeah.
So I'm really trying to more intentionally design for this. And what's interesting is if I look at how I actually behave as a CEO in my business, I'm doing it anyway.
How do you mean?
I'm doing it anyway of working in seasons because I'm doing a bunch of like execution work and then I'm just burning myself out. And then I need to pull back anyway. So like I'm kind of doing it anyway. And I could be more intentional though about how I do it. And I think that, and I think also like sometimes I have a lot of creativities and sometimes I'm not in a creative season and I'm trying to force it. That's me doing it anyway too, right? I'm not in creative season right now, but I'm trying to force it. So I think I'm just trying to get myself more aligned.
Yeah. So we interviewed the founder, Lindsay Dorff, on the show a couple months ago, and I caught up with her. We got dinner last night, and she was telling me how in the process of getting her app launched, that, you know, they have, I can't remember if it's 1.5 million or they have venture funding that they're, you know, using right now to get it built, but they just launched and are starting to onboard more members. And she had been pushing so hard toward the end, you know, working 16-hour days for like 7 days a week, basically, that her health actually started to deteriorate and she kind of didn't have a choice. And she basically was like, it's a wake-up call. Like if you keep pushing it and you don't listen
you fight in the cycle.
The first couple signals, eventually the signals are going to get too loud to ignore. And then you're going to be forced to take a break. So I think that's the other. She just went on like a 1-week vacation where she said she didn't use a computer or a phone at all.
Good for her.
All she did was like eat and read. I think they were in Spain. I can't remember where she went, but she was like, I talked to her the following week in our catch-up call, and she was like, I feel like a brand new person. 1 week away from it all, and she was like transformed.
Yeah, because you can get forced into taking a break. You get forced into execution. You get forced into like, shit, now I like waited too long and I got to do all the creative ideas right now. And so like, I love this. I have a question for you about some of the phases that we've talked about. Okay. Because I think it's not important that you like, if you're listening to this, you like took exact notes and got all the phases and like know exactly what the day that it starts. I think what's maybe most important is to like grab some of the phases that resonate with you and be looking out for when they come. So I'm curious for you, Katie, like if any of these phases resonate or kind of stick out and you remember them as like, oh, like I either particularly like that phase or I could be better at looking out for when that phase comes.
Yeah, 2 of them.
Yeah.
I would say the Madonna phase sticks out to me because of the like social aspect of it and the kind of like the putting yourself out there more element. I'm now thinking about how I want to try to align my more, I'll say, performance related tasks to that. And I'm also thinking about I can't remember who's the muse for. I guess this is bad if I'm saying.
No, just describe it, and you can swap out.
Sade.
Swap out your own muse for it. By the way, like you don't have to use these ones. Like whoever read. The whole point is that there's someone in your head, so that instead of being like I'm in my follicular phase, you have someone in your head that like you like can channel, and it feels like you can feel their vibe.
Well, I guess it's like someone. It's the incubation idea, but also maybe the Maya Angelou, like the creativity, but almost from a more introspective and like subtler. Artist's way instead of like a hard charging hustle productive way. I think that's a nice balance because I think I tend to think about it in kind of a binary of like I'm either pushing really hard and everything is happening or I'm doing nothing and nothing is happening. And so I think And I always feel really guilty in
Yeah.
that latter phase. So I think this idea of like, oh, these are actually superpowers that you can harness is cool.
I'm really trying to lean myself more into my creativity these days. Like I'm really trying to push myself to be more in like what I call like Terra Land, which is where I come up with ridiculous bear outfits and stuff like that. I'm wearing a bear outfit if you're listening to this. It's covered in teddy bears. And so I think the ones that stand out for me, because I think to my point earlier, you don't have to like memorize all of these. It's just like, which ones are you in the season of life where you're gonna like tap into these specific ones more? I kind of want to tap a little bit more into that sort of third phase that J.K. Rowling, like creative, coming up with ideas. That's one of the creation modes. So I want to like know when that's coming and tap into that more. And I also want to, the other one that was kind of like that's sort of the creativity one, is the Hedy Lamarr one, where you're sort of like multitasking, thinking about like a lot of different things, coming up with new like inventions and ideas. Those two creative ones I want to lean a little bit more into.
That one didn't stick out to me as much.
I think that's okay.
So I'll be interested to hear in the comments which one stuck out to y'all. And I think that is where we'll call it for today. But we need to now talk about in our next episode or in another episode about all these big impactful moves you made.
Yeah, during my last execution season. Okay, and then I want to hear sort of because you're in another season too right now, so I want to like double click on this and hear about this season where like Clipboard Katie is kind of like, I just had a serious execution phase. You're kind of having like I don't know if it's like a creation or what you would call it.
I don't know what it is. That's I think where I'm still trying to figure that out.
I love it, but that's kind of like the whole journey. That's what we're talking about, and kind of like being where you are in business and life, and like that's okay, and maybe just optimizing what you're working on and having acceptance for yourself of like where you are. That's cool. Lean into it. Work on the things that are right for where you are right now.
Yep. Amazing. Okay, we'll see you next time.